Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we are going to be reading true creepy encounter stories. I hope you enjoy them. Also, before we get into the stories, I do want to mention that there was a glitch with memberships where everyone who was a member was refunded their membership by YouTube. So, if you were a member and you would like to rejoin, the link to rejoin will be in the description down below. So, now, without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories. Our first story was submitted by u/Brunsdon Julia on r/Interscare. This all happened back in 2020. I'm a 21-year-old female from Australia, and the legal drinking age here is 18. This happened in October, probably a couple of days after my birthday. I had just turned 18, and my family and friends wanted to celebrate by taking me to every pub and club in my hometown. I live in a relatively small town with only 3 nightclubs and probably 10 popular pubs. The entire night was a blast. The last place we went to was a nightclub, and we ended up making friends with some backpackers that were out. They invited us back to a hostel nearby where we could continue to party. I obviously didn't know any of these people until that night, but I could see who was a part of the group and who wasn't, and even in my drunken state, I had this weird gut feeling about one of the guys who was hanging around our group. I just noticed that he didn't seem to be talking to anyone, and no one had said a word to him while we were still at the club. After we left the club and started heading up the road to the hostel, I noticed that man that I had a bad feeling about was following us. I guess I had just explained this away by telling myself that perhaps the people that we were with did know this guy, or maybe he was staying at the same hostel. Every time I made eye contact with this man, he gave me a very creepy smile. Once we arrived at the hostel, we walked up a long flight of stairs and walked down a pretty dirty and run-down hallway. We entered the community kitchen/lounging area where everyone was dancing and talking. Half the group was on one side of the room, sitting around a table smoking weed and chatting, and the other half was closer to the doorway, singing and dancing to very loud music. I guess it must have been an hour or so of this, and I had not noticed the creepy man, but it wasn't long until I did. I saw that he started standing near the doorway, and I became immediately aware of this, as I could sense that he was eyeing me down while I was dancing with one of the girls that I had made friends with. At some point, she walked away, and for no longer than 5 minutes, and immediately the creepy guy approached me and tried to start dancing with me. I was naive and extremely wasted, so I wasn't aware of how stupid my decisions were at the time. So I just smiled and continued to dance, leaving a little distance between us. Now, this is where it starts to get scary, and the creepy man quickly came right up to me and grabbed my arm. It took me a minute to realize what was happening, but once I did, I saw that he was pulling me towards the doorway. I tried to yank my arm back away from him, but his grip was very tight. This man must have been in his late 30s or more. I quickly realized what his intentions were because of how tightly he was holding me so that I could not pull away. In the last few seconds of this encounter, I started to panic as the music was very loud, so no one would hear me if I screamed, and I did not know my way around this building. As I was realizing the gravity of the situation, the girl I had been dancing with earlier had noticed what was going on and ran over. She grabbed me and pulled me away from the creep. I suppose because of the alcohol, we did not tell anyone what had happened, and I did not mention this to any of my family at the time. I guess I never really acknowledged how close I came that night to being in danger, until recently. but I will forever be grateful to the girl that saved me from the creep that night. Thank you for reading. Some friends and I took a trip to Cincinnati to play in an SCG. For all people who do this, it's not all about how fancy the room is, since you're going to be playing all day. So I booked us this cheap room super close to the event. We pulled up around 6 a.m. so we could settle in and then register. This place was really creepy. One, it's kind of away from things. We pull into the parking lot, and there was a room on the bottom floor with its door wide open. As we're parking, a man was standing and appeared in the door frame with a camcorder. This guy's room at a glance looked like he was living there, not staying the weekend. As we were walking in to register, he definitely was watching us, as he's following us with his camera as we were walking. That was the first creepy incident. Later that night, we come back to sleep, and there he is again. But this time, he makes it known that he acknowledges us by giving us a head nod. This time you can hear other people. Later on, we went to grab some ice, and the guy and what could appear to be his family was hanging out in the parking lot drinking beers and smoking with that same camera. So we head to bed, and a couple of friends decide to draft a couple of packs that they bought with some beer, and a friend decides to go grab a Coke from the machine. He uses the elevator. The door opens, and there stands a boy only wearing a diaper. Please understand that this was about 2 a.m. with no adults in sight. The boy follows him out, and as he's picking his drink, the little boy is trying to hit the button as well. So he gave him a little hand check. The boy went his way, and my friend went to bed to wake the next day to tell us about this crazy stuff. I feel like this could have went sideways real quick. This happened not too long ago. Although it's not too crazy, it definitely had me freaking out after it occurred. It probably didn't help that I frequent this subreddit very often. I had just moved to a new apartment building, and it was my first time living alone. It was actually my first day, and I had moved my stuff in and headed to school and was coming home for the evening. My parking is in an underground basement, which was scary, as is for the first few days. So I would always leave my car and book it to the elevator so that I could get out of there. As I stood waiting, it was taking quite a while for the elevator to come down, and I could hear it beeping on the different floors that it was stopping at. Once it finally arrived, the doors opened and there was a tall guy that was clearly disheveled and on something. The minute I made eye contact with him, my senses went off, and I get the most uneasy feeling. I hesitated, as I was on the last floor, so whenever someone was in the elevator, they were always getting out, and I waited for him to do the same. Instead, he just stood there staring at me, and I managed to blurt out, "Are you going up?" He mumbled some sort of yeah. Alarm bells were going off, but I thought maybe I was overthinking, so I awkwardly walked in and stood against the wall as far as I could from him. I asked him what floor, as there was no floor selected, and he stuttered between numbers, and happened to say the same floor that I was getting off on, which scared me even more. I tried not to panic, but as soon as I entered, I tried to keep my gaze down, but he was just facing and staring at me with the most uncomfortable look in his eyes. The minute the elevator started going up, he started to shuffle and was moving towards me when it ended up stopping on the first floor in the lobby. I was in the left corner near the doors, and he was basically right in front of the door, stepping towards me when the doors opened. I was honestly freaking out, and as soon as the door slid open, I scooched out and went straight out the doors onto the main street. I stood there for a few minutes with my heart pounding because of how scared I was. and I remember him staring at me confused for a minute, and then he stayed back in the elevator as the doors closed. I remember that there were two guys standing in the lobby who witnessed the whole thing, and I nervously laughed that I was just creeped out by the guy in the elevator. I believe that they were just door dashers, so they stared at me and they were like, okay. I ended up taking the stairs up and was scared out of my mind. I was praying that he was just someone's guest, hence why he was so confused and weird. My dad came to visit me the very next day, and I was telling him how badly the guy freaked me out, and that same night we ran into him again. He was waiting for the elevator, and the minute I saw him, I told my dad and made him take the stairs with me again. Thank God I haven't seen him again, so I'm really hoping that he was just a guest. But if I ever see an elevator with just one dude in it, I do not take the risk. May have just been me overthinking, but something was definitely not right with him. Tonight, I was out riding a little motorcycle that I was doing some work on, up and down my street, making sure the chain stayed tight. My engine shut off. I tried to start it a few times, out of gas. So I start walking it back to my house, and I see a man with no shirt covered in tattoos walking straight towards me. Immediately, I had a terrible feeling. This guy isn't just crossing the street. He's approaching me, saying absolutely nothing. He had this look on his face, not friendly, like he wanted to eat me. I realized I had no weapons, not even my phone. I keep walking. He gets about 4 feet from me and throws his hands up and says, "What's up?" I don't say anything back and keep walking. I look towards my house to see if my brother, who was helping me work on the bike, was standing on the corner, but I didn't see him. Oh boy. The guy asked something along the lines of, "I've got a question," to which I responded, "Nah, man, I'm not. I can't." I just kept walking, mind racing. He says something else that I couldn't quite hear over my own adrenaline. He's following. What do? Do I throw the bike down and run for my life? My ACL is completely torn in my left knee. I could collapse. Do I yell for my brother? That could escalate things. So I went with instinct. Get the heck out of there. My fear was definitely noticeable. My pace was now a speed walk. I check my back every few seconds and he's still following me from a distance. Whatever I'm doing, it's working. Or maybe it's not, and this guy is holding back. He's still following me, but I'm moving much faster. I make it to the corner of my little townhouse street, and my brother comes around it at the same time. I tell him we're in danger and to run to the garage. We ran as fast as we could and made it into the garage where I dropped the bike and hit the garage door button. Had my brother lock the doors while I grabbed a firearm. I called the non-emergency police number and warned them about him. My main concern was that I felt lucky to be alive, but the next person they encounter might not have that on their side. Before I go to bed, I will have to secure the perimeter Steven Seagal style. I live with a Great Dane, which makes me feel safer, but I'd hate for him to get hurt. Wish me luck. Short backstory. This happened almost a year ago. I'm a 19-year-old female and I live in a small town in Australia. I always take my 13-year-old Jack Russell mix for a short 20-ish minute walk down the road at about 7 to 7:30 p.m. On this night, I had to take him at about 8 to 8:30 p.m. as I had to work late, and the sun was just setting to the point where I can see, but not very well. That could have just been my poor eyesight, but it was enough to manage without needing a flashlight. Although I did have one on me, I just didn't want to use it. We had just made our loop around a small community garden. As I was leaving the gate, I looked to my right and saw a person in all black heading towards me. I was also wearing all black, so we both looked pretty suspicious. but out of panic I crossed the road and headed left. They did the same not 1 second later. I'm a naturally fast walker, but I made myself go faster. All I had to do was cross the road one more time and turn right, go down a few houses, and then I'm home. So, walking faster, but not enough to where it was obvious, I crossed the road and turned right. This person didn't cross the road, but turned right and stayed on the other side of the road. We were about parallel to each other on the street. I knew that if I crossed, I could run, and I wasn't too far from home. When I got into my yard, the person stopped across the road. At this point, I realized the door was locked and I didn't have a key. The person stayed across the road, so I rang the bell and was pounding on the door. My older brother answered, and the person had just made it into our yard. My brother told the person to leave and walked back the way we came. My brother asked who it was, and I explained all of this to him. From this day, I take my dog for a walk before work, early morning rather than after work at night. I do enjoy sunset walks, but for my safety, I have stopped, even a year later. I was on a long drive and decided to spend the night at a crappy motel in Chattanooga. I had the lights on and didn't draw the blinds all the way, and was laying on the bed with a window above the headboard. I sat up briefly to plug in my phone and noticed what looked like the figure of a man through the blinds. I immediately got up and opened the blinds, and lo and behold, there was this guy with his hands in his coat pockets and hat pulled over his face staring at me. I could tell that he wasn't homeless. I yelled at him through the window, "What the heck? Get out of here." And he quickly turned away and walked away nervously. Probably a voyeurist hoping that a woman was going to walk naked out of the shower. In any case, it was creepy, especially given how little there was around. This happened pretty recently. I, a 23-year-old female, work in property management. I was not supposed to be working alone that day, but my manager and coworker called in sick, and my other coworker had requested time off that we all forgot about. I voiced my concerns because the property is in a crime-ridden area, and I've had some bad experiences in the past. I actually transitioned to a different role because I no longer felt safe, but they offered me a lot of money to come back, so I did. The front doors stay unlocked during business hours, so literally anybody could just walk in. Also, it's a large and busy property. I needed someone with me just to help me with all the tours and residents. Nobody was able to do anything, so I called one of our sister properties and begged for their leaser to help me. They agreed, but the leaser was going to have to leave early. I agreed and was just happy to have someone helping me. Flash forward to an hour before closing, and the leaser had to go. Literally as she walked out, this disgruntled man walked in holding a duffel bag. I hate to profile him, but he was clearly homeless and not all there mentally. He walked up to me and handed me his ID. I asked how I could help him, and all he could say was, "You don't respect veterans." I again asked how I could help him, and he couldn't give me a straight answer. I was getting fed up when the coworker who had requested the day off happened to come in just to say hi. My coworker instantly knew something was off, so he came over to investigate. The homeless guy didn't like my coworker asking him all these questions, so he opened up his duffel bag and started sorting through it. He pulled out a piece of woman's lingerie and threw it on my desk. Then he pulled out a box, and in that box was an SD card. He was trying to put it into my computer, and I told him not to do that. He listened to me, but proceeded to rummage through his bag. He seemed very irritated because we kept telling him, "If you can't tell us how we can help you, then you need to leave." At this point, I'm getting scared that he's going to pull out a gun and just light us up. Instead of a gun, he pulled out a knife. Instantly, both me and my coworker start screaming at him to put the knife away and leave. He eventually did put the knife away, but he refused to leave. I messaged my manager, who was out sick, but lived on site, to please call the cops, and told him that there was a guy with a knife in the office. My coworker who was with me didn't physically force him out, but he guided him out by walking towards him and making himself look threatening. Finally, the dude leaves, and we immediately lock the doors. He kept trying to come back in and was cussing up a storm outside. Eventually, he made his way to the convenience store that is attached to the building. Within 30 seconds of him going in, about 4 squad cars pulled up. We pointed at the store and they ran in there. The guy got aggressive with the police, so they beat him and ended up detaining him. I told the police to look in his bag for the knife and they found it. I identified the weapon and answered some of the police questions. I didn't press charges because this was clearly a mental health crisis, and jail isn't going to reform that. He needs serious professional help. The DA pressed charges on my behalf, and the courts granted me a protection order. They also let him go without bail. The last update that I got was that he didn't show up to his court hearing, and now there's a warrant out for his arrest. I wonder why. I've not seen him since the event took place, and that is all that I really care about. This happened when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I'm 18 years old now, and for a little bit of context, I hated anyone touching my hair. And my mom would sometimes touch my hair and talk about how much she loves it because it was curly and thick. And I'd always be like, "Ooh, Mom, don't do that." And it was a mutual understanding that I disliked it when people touched my hair, even family. So we were in Dollar Tree, buying some snacks and stuff, standing in the checkout line, and I'm behind my mom just zoning out. And I feel someone behind me toss my hair up and just started touching it and was like, "I love your hair." This was really creepy. Actually, she just came behind me and started touching my hair with no warning and complimenting me, like about how it was so thick and pretty. And like, "Thank you, but come on." My mom kind of brushed it off and was like, "Yeah, I know you don't like it when people touch your hair," but I was mortified. Thankfully, I've had no more hair touchers. But don't just sneak up on a teenage girl and touch their hair with no warning. That's freaky. I saw a post on Let's Not Meet about a hair sniffer at the pharmacy, and it reminded me of this encounter. Edit, just to clarify, since I see some people talking about it and don't want to give off the wrong impression. I'm not a person of color, and I don't have 4C hair. Also, the more I think about it, the more I realize that at the time my hair was very damaged because I was bleaching it a lot. It was not pretty, nor very well taken care of. This one's short, but considerably creepy. For context, I was about 10 or 11 when this happened. I live fairly close to a mental health facility for middle-aged to elderly patients who require psychiatric care. You can see it from one of my friend's gardens. One day, me and all my friends are outside playing, chilling, hanging out, the usual. One of the workers from said facility approaches us and asked if we've seen X person with Y and Z clothing and characteristics. Nope. Thinking nothing of it, we just kick about as normal. A couple of days pass, and one of my friends, who's been staying out late and having sleepovers with other friends, tells us that things have went missing from his house, specifically his bedroom. We are all of the opinion that he's just being silly and trying to get a laugh out of us. Either that or his mom moved him. Again, we forget about it. We are all out the next day. Friend is nowhere to be seen. There's a police car outside his house, and again, a bit of commotion and hassle in the immediate area. Confused and curious kids, we check it out. My friend appears and tells us the most spine-chilling story. That morning, he's walking upstairs in his home, and from his point of view, you can see into his room, and specifically under his bed. To his horror, there's a grown adult hiding under his bed, asleep. Long story short, it's the missing patient, and he'd been in the house for the last 2 days. Whilst the man posed no significant danger and didn't have any malicious intent, this still creeps me out to this day. Normally, I wouldn't have believed him, but his mom confirmed it, and it was the talk of the neighborhood for a while. Safe to say, I never stayed at his house again, or even stepped foot inside of his house. So this happened to me about a year ago. I had just shifted to a new city for work. I was a 23-year-old female at that time and living alone. On that particular day, I was working from home and I heard a knock on the door. I was preoccupied with something and opened the door without checking the keyhole. There was a Sikh man at the door. Sikhism is a religion in India, and people who belong to this religion wear a turban. He told me that he was collecting a donation for langar. Langar is a community kitchen of a gurudwara, a place of worship of Sikhs, where people are fed irrespective of their caste, economic status, religion, etc. I decided to donate some money, and as I was reaching for my purse, he told me that he has something to say. He went on to guess my parents' name, the exam that I was preparing for, and many such information that was not available on social media, and only someone who was close to me would know. At this point, I started to freak out and wanted to get rid of him, and he could sense that I was freaking out, and kept telling me to not be scared and to maintain eye contact. This went on for a good 10 to 15 minutes, and then he told me to donate 7,000 rupees, and I will be blessed with good fortune. I told him I cannot pay that amount, but he was insistent, but I was firm with my decision. Then he asked me to give at least 500 rupees. I gave him the money because I wanted to get rid of him. This incident really creeped me out. I still don't know how he got all the information. I was new to the city, so nobody from the city knew of any of this information. I later found out from a friend that in Sikhism, they do not go door to door to collect money, and if people want to donate money, they have to directly donate it to the Gurudwara. So basically, this guy was a con artist dressed as a Sikh person, but how he knew so much about me is still beyond me. So, at the time of this story, I was a 6-year-old female, and I was coming home from the movies. I was with my little brother, who was 3, so we were pretty small. First, we had to drop off my aunt, so my mom headed that way, and I was just playing on my tablet, and we got to my aunt's house. My mom went inside with my aunt. 3 to 5 minutes pass. I see a man walking by the car, and he opens the car door. I was in the back and quickly turned off my tablet, ducking a little. I glanced at my brother. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I think he was asleep. It was pretty late, 9 to 11 p.m. I heard him rummaging through my mom's cup holders. Then he closed the door and walked off with his hands in his pockets. Right after, my mom came in and she didn't see her phone. She took me and my brother inside my aunt's house and they had the cops called. I described the man and went home not thinking anything of it. I still wonder what or if he had any other motives. What if he did see me or my little brother? It's not too scary, but I just think, what would have happened? About 3 years ago, when I was 18, I was working as a waiter in a restaurant in the mall. I'm very introverted, but it never affected my relationship with customers. But speaking to people I wasn't serving gave me major butterflies. I had just finished my shift around 1700 and was walking out, when I noticed a woman who looked in pain holding her stomach was looking at me. I had to walk past her to get to the exit, and I was trying to avoid her because I was not looking for conversation, and I hated when people asked me for money. I know it's selfish, but I worked really hard for the little money that the customers tipped me that day. I maneuvered my way around the people, but she called out to me. I acted like I didn't hear her and moved faster. Eventually, she ran to me and grabbed my arm, crying, "Please, please, brother. I got children, and I got cancer of the tummy." She lifted up her dirty shirt and showed me a large surgery wound across her stomach. I told her that I didn't have anything, but she continued to badger me. Eventually, I just ran to the stairs and went upstairs, and I saw her chasing me, but I was way faster than she was. She slowed down at the second case to catch her breath, and I turned in to get off at the third floor where she could not see me. I took the elevator next to the stairs back to the first floor so that I could get to the exit. Eventually, I got to the bus stop and was on my way home. When I got off at my stop, I went to the corner shop to get bread. At the end of the road, I saw the woman from the mall and her boyfriend. They must have definitely seen me, even though I made a solid effort to take a way longer way home so that they wouldn't have seen me. Around 1900, I get a knock at my gate. I live in a house that has 2 slide gates in front of the main entrance. I looked out of the window, and to my horror, I saw the woman and her boyfriend. I stayed quiet and hoped that they would just go away, but they stayed outside my house for 2 hours until my parents arrived. They begged my parents for money or food to feed their kids. My father found it weird that they were there at 2100, so he told them that we didn't have anything and to get away from the house before they called the police. Surprisingly, they left without any hassle. I told my parents that these people were begging me for money at the mall and that they followed me home and stayed outside the house for 2 hours. Thankfully, we never saw them again after that day. I used to be an assistant martial arts teacher at a school that taught kids aged 5 to 18. It was located on a military base, so we had a variety of students who had traveled around the world and had experienced more than most kids their age. Different personalities, open minds, and a willingness to explore were common traits among the children. There was this one little girl who possessed a completely different trait. I was 20 years old at the time, and this girl, let's call her Olivia, was around 10 years old. She had black hair, a fair complexion, and was always smiling. She became quite attached to me and always found ways to get my attention. Sometimes she would run up to me, playfully hit me, and then run away giggling. Other times she would misbehave in class out of spite just to gain my attention. Overall, she seemed like a normal young girl, discovering herself and the world around her. That's what anyone would assume. However, one day, I noticed that Olivia began acting strangely, unlike her usual self. She appeared heartbroken about something, looking tired, yet antsy and nervous. I asked her if she was okay, but she simply replied with a yes and didn't elaborate. I would have raised my concerns with her parents, but they were never present. As the days went by, Olivia continued to appear downcast and sad. Then, one afternoon after class, she ran up to me with her familiar smile on her face, the one that always made me smile too. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" I asked, starting to unfold it. "I drew it for you," Olivia said with a smile, giggling. As soon as I saw what she had drawn, shock instantly coursed through me, leaving me at a loss for words. A chill ran up my spine and my hands trembled. It was a crude drawing of me dressed in my martial arts uniform, with Olivia depicted stabbing me with a kitchen knife. Multiple stab wounds on my body were oozing blood, which also covered Olivia and the knife that she held. Strangely, both of us were smiling in the drawing. "It's me killing you," Olivia exclaimed, laughing. I quickly folded up the drawing and returned it to her. "Thank you, Olivia, but you can keep it," I said, my voice still flat, still in a state of shock. I didn't see her that afternoon. She had quit the class. Deep down, I felt relieved that she had decided to quit. Even though Olivia had left, her impact remained. I was left grappling with unease that refused to subside. The image of her drawing was etched into my mind, an eerie reminder of the complex emotions that children can harbor. I don't know where Olivia may be in life now. She would be the age that I was at the time that she handed me that drawing. I hope she's a healthy young woman, mentally sound and living a good life. I only hope that the drawing was a single occurrence with Olivia, and no one else had to experience such a disturbing situation like I did that afternoon. I'm not much of a storyteller, so I'm going to jump right into it. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I attended a Halloween costume party this past weekend. I had gone with a couple of my friends to a mutual friend's house. There was a big bonfire, booze, and some of that green stuff going around, so there was a big crowd. To make matters a little creepier, the friend's house is far off the main road, no neighbors for miles, surrounded by sugarcane fields, and the nearest paved road was about 2 miles up the dirt road that you had to drive down to actually reach the house. Given the natural spooky season vibe, there was a natural chill factor. I was getting food from the food table when a guy walked up and stood across from me. He was wearing a burlap scarecrow-looking mask. I've seen it before at part stores. It's creepy, yet very commercial-looking. Halloween is just a night for girls to dress up like skanks. Nice to meet you too. Now, get away from the mac and cheese, please. I can't believe you actually left the house like that. What did I do to you? I'm just trying to get my mac and cheese and buffalo chicken dip. I ignored this guy because I could immediately tell that he was hoping for some kind of attention. It's a little tight around the top, isn't it? Okay, Scarecrow. I don't know how Dorothy did things in Oz, but I can't necessarily control how manufacturers make costumes. And it's a Ghostbuster costume. I know, skanky as you would put it. Have fun doing whatever it is that you're doing, I said, as I got my food and walked back towards my friends. Something about the Scarecrow seemed off, aside from his abrasive personality. I tried my best to avoid looking in his direction, but when I did, he was either sitting alone or attempting to talk to some girl that managed to find herself briefly alone. I had lost my friends for a short time, and my good pal the Scarecrow came over and had a seat next to me. He just sat cross-legged and let his arms drape over a surface behind him. "Where do you stay at?" he asked. I got up and walked away. I don't know what world he lives in where he thinks that I would answer that question. At least no one that I live on. I knew probably about 60% of the party, but I couldn't place his voice. It didn't sound familiar from voice alone. Nerd moment, but he kind of sounded like the Bretons from Skyrim. I hope someone knows what that means. I told my friend whose party we were at that the Scarecrow was being a little creepy for my taste. I asked if she knew who it was, but she claims that she hadn't seen anyone in that costume. I pointed him out to her, but she didn't know who he was. It was getting late, and I was attempting to leave. I was only one of maybe a dozen people left standing. The rest had either gone home or were dealing with alcohol-related roadblocks in their journey home. There hadn't been any sign of the Scarecrow for about an hour. As I'm about to get in my car, look what the cat dragged in. A 6-foot-tall Scarecrow man who thought that it was a great idea to pop out from behind a vehicle. What's your problem? I've been trying to talk to you all night and you won't give me any of your time. That's the problem. You all look like people, like me, like we're not good enough. Geez, this was uncomfortable. I wasn't talking to him because he was being disrespectful. He was mean and a jerk. And this was just another step towards being uncomfortable. I wouldn't give somebody like that my time. I told him that I wasn't interested and that I needed him to leave me alone. He kept rambling on, and I finally asked who he was. His response was simple and unsettling. He chuckled and said, "I wouldn't dare show you what's underneath, Carly Beth." That's a line from Goosebumps, to those of you that don't know. I had to look it up because it sounded familiar. Suddenly, my friends and boyfriend ran over towards me and stopped when he was between me and the scarecrow guy, out of breath. "Sorry," my friend's name, "told me to walk you to your car," he said. He looked at the scarecrow and waved him off and told him to fly away, little canary. The scarecrow guy turned away and left. Not sure where he went, but it wasn't near me. I was finally able to leave in peace, but I kept checking my rearview mirrors for anyone that might be following me, because I'm also really cautious. I checked under my car for tracking devices. Maybe a bit of an overreaction, but I've never been kidnapped. I texted my friend and asked about the guy. She still doesn't know who he was, but she theorizes that it was a party crasher who showed up with the intention of scaring people. Regardless, it was creepy, and I hope that me and this scarecrow never meet again. So this happened about 11 years ago when I was about 16. Those days, after school let out, my grandparents would drop me off at a local youth center. It was a very small, old building on a rundown street. Right next to the youth center there was a bar. I had been told time and time again to never play around outside. Since the area was rough, anything could happen. Now, for a little bit of extra context, the youth center receptionist/guide sat at a desk and watched over everyone. They also had a camera system mounted on a wall inside to ensure visitors in the front area were safe. One day, there was 4 of us at the center. We were all doing our own thing, working on homework, reading, playing games, etc. Kyle, a friend that I had made at the center, stopped by. Now, Kyle was a grade above me. Nice enough too, but he was a little bossy. Anyway, he grew bored setting with us and said that he wanted some air, pressuring me. "Come on, are you really scared?" At this time, it was getting dark out. I could see the sky going black from the front window. For some reason, we still followed him outside. I remember trailing him across the street to a big dirt lot full of debris. As we huddled all together, laughing and dancing and just goofing. That is, until we saw a strange man waddling down the empty street towards us. He was about 30, had tousled neck-length brown hair. He was skinny, pale, dressed in a dirty hoodie and jeans. He was smiling a lot, like creeper-level smile. Hey, he rasped. "You kids having fun?" Kyle was unfazed, cheerfully answered with a duh. The rest of us were quiet, put off by the man's arrival. "Want to come hang with me?" This moment stays with me, because I remember getting a bad feeling in my stomach, like I knew that he could hurt us. And then the man tucked a hand into his hoodie, slowly, deliberately. Kyle and I started making a bunch of noise, and we all booked it back across the street. I heard the man's hyena shriek laughter as we ran into the center. I'm forever grateful that we got out of that situation safely. After that scare, I continued to visit the center. Never mentioned the incident to my family, but I was much more careful staying indoors. Always trust your gut, folks. Okay, so just to preface this was on Friday the 27th, and my boyfriend and I had smoked cannabis before going out to eat and catch a movie. So my friend and I are in line at BK and trying to decide if we want to split a meal or get separate meals. My friend orders her food, and when I get to order, I straight up get asked if we smoked weed. My first thought and question was, is it that noticeable? Now, I could barely hear this guy because he was speaking low, but he was asking about a certain strain that I could really care less about. but it gets to the point where he tells me how much I could get for a certain price point, which I said I would keep in mind. Now, my friend and I didn't spray any perfume or body spray. We normally do, but we completely forgot to. I get to the table. My friend picked out, and I start telling her about what just happened. Not even a minute after I sat down does this guy come over and pass me a folded up napkin of this weed to sample. Now, my friend and I are just shocked and talk about this. I ended up putting the napkin in my bra because it was the only place that I could. I had no pockets. This guy ends up coming to our table 3 to 4 more times within a span of 15 to 20 minutes. When I went up to get my food before these other encounters occurred, this guy let me know that he got off at 7:30 p.m. and asked if we wanted to hang out. I straight up said that my friend and I were going on a date and we're going to a movie straight after this. After I got my food, this guy stopped at our table to ask what movies were playing, what his name was. I don't remember what he said, just that it has something to do with California's state bird. And the other times, I can't remember why he came over. He just spoke to me and not my friend, and I could tell that this guy was trying to get some information on me. Now, I'm a very private person, and also a very cautious person. I could tell that this guy was trying something and I acted dumb, even though I knew what was going on. My friend had noticed that after the last time he came over, that this guy was staring at me anytime he passed by. I could tell that he was staring at me because of the windows that made a reflection because my back was to him. It got to a point where I told my friend that we needed to hurry because this is making me uncomfortable. So we finished quickly and left. Now, my friend and I did originally go to the movie theater, but we decided to watch the movie at home because of how busy it was. When we decided to watch the movie at my place, we tried to hurry and leave because of the time, and that guy was going to be off any minute. I don't think I'll be going to Burger King anytime soon because my hair color is blue. It's very noticeable and not many people have that color in my town. Plus, it's a smallish town. I hope to never meet this guy again, and if I do, I may have to have a backbone, especially if he acts like he did it this time. Not a very interesting story, and also trying to tell things days later doesn't help, but that's my creepy encounter. I'm a 17-year-old female, and I had a creepy encounter the night that I'm writing this. My parents opened up a haunted house in my dad's shop, and we had a few actors. Names obviously changed to their role. The actors were me, my dad, my mom, my sister, Bear, Ghostface, Cheerleader, Alien, Prisoner, Doll, and Skeleton. I know it's a lot. Let me explain how the setup was. The shop has a store in the front, a gym in the middle, storage in the back. Dad would lead the patron into the front of the store and ring the bell to let us know to get ready. Then the patron would pass Bear and Ghostface. Then they would get jump scared by Cheerleader, me, and Prisoner, and then pass through the rest. Alien would follow them. Simple. So when we were near the end of our time, Dad let in a guy, like normal. He shall be known as Creepy Guy. I think now that I should mention that most of us were minors. Sister, Bear, Ghostface, and Skeleton are middle schoolers, and Cheerleader, Alien, and I are high schoolers. Creepy Guy touched Bear's shoulders and almost pulled a knife on Bear and Ghostface. After he passed them, he didn't notice Cheerleader, but grabbed Alien and scratched his arm. After that, he stared at Prisoner and ignored me. He then started speaking in a different language. It sounded like chanting, but I don't know, towards Skeleton, Doll, and Sister. Mom then ran him off. We were on edge for the rest of the night. I have 3 theories. Theory 1, he was a druggie, commonplace in my town. Theory 2, he was a really religious man praying over us. Or Theory 3, he was cursing us. I'm leaning towards 2, but it was still very creepy. I'm not entirely sure if this is the right place for this, but here it goes. For some context, I'm a 30-year-old white guy. Anyways, I decided to go to TJ Maxx on a Saturday, which was already a bad decision to begin with. I get there and I go to the guys section. As I'm hunting through some pants, this guy, 30-ish, close to me strikes up a conversation about how busy it is and blah blah blah. I entertain it and I'm polite. He proceeds to ask me more probing questions about what I do for a living, and then about my plans for the future. I'm not really in the mood to give my life story, so I find a polite way to see myself out of this conversation. I leave and make my way to a different section of the store. Long story short, 3 more guys around the same age try to strike up a conversation about the store and the deals. One guy even proceeds to mention how he loves thrifting, as he has on a Supreme shirt. No judgment thrown towards that type of stuff, and maybe he even thrifted that piece. It all just seems really convenient and strange. I've never had this happen to me before while out shopping. The only thing that I could think of is maybe some sort of secret shopper thing, or some scam that they're running. Has anyone else ever experienced this? I'm a 35-year-old female, and I used to work at a small startup that had a small warehouse in the city. I enjoyed it because it had great benefits, perks, and a pretty easy commute. I just walked a few blocks to the metro line in our city. Usually I worked the day shift, so my walk to the station wasn't too bad. I just encountered normal city life. On the occasional time that I worked into the night, I usually walked with some coworkers I knew, or my then boyfriend would pick me up. If I had to make the walk by myself, I'd wear giant headphones to deter catcalls and other annoyances. I had a doctor's appointment that morning and was allowed to make up my shift by staying after the day shift crew left. However, I finished my shift before the rest of the evening crew, which meant that I had to make the walk by myself that day. It was already dark, and the street was pretty much deserted, except for this one really tall burly dude walking just ahead of me yelling into his phone. I had my headphones on, but nothing playing, because I wanted to be aware of my surroundings. Big burly guy sounded angry, and didn't turn back to look at me until after he yelled into the phone. I did my part, and now it's up to you to get rid of the body. I don't care what you do, just make it disappear. Then he turned around and stopped walking, looking at me surprised. I quickly stopped to not run into him, and give an awkward grimace/smile, acting like I hadn't just heard him say that because I was listening to music. At the next crosswalk, I quickly crossed the street. He just stared, standing in place until I was a block away, and then turned the corner and disappeared. I don't know if this guy actually knew that I was behind him, and said that to scare me because he thought that I was listening into his conversation. I hope. Or he was up to no good. But that was super creepy. I've never walked to the metro when it was dark after that by myself. I either had a ride or a buddy to walk with. Thank you so much for listening to all of the stories in this video. I hope you enjoyed them. I also hope that you enjoy the extra rain at the end. Get a good night's sleep, everyone, and I'll read to you in the next video. Bye-bye now.